Well, thank you very much for inviting me again. I know people really love speeches by Level Knowledge. I know that I just was by a certain camp reunion to tell a story. And it was a disaster. I could not get the kids quiet for more than 5 seconds. I tried switching the story. I went from my serious mode to happy mode, to try to be funny mode. The worst thing is when you have kids, when you try to make a joke, and they go, that was so funny. Right? There's like no way to recover from it, if you know what I mean. And as I'm standing over here, and I don't know, should I stop in the middle of the story, just call it quits, retire, apply for a different job, leave, walk out, I have to finish the story. And I said to myself, okay, Rabbi Shalom, why are you doing this to me? So I said, when I got into the car tonight, I said, okay, I have a story to say to a bunch of kids by a camp reunion. That's nothing for me. I've done that literally thousands of times in my life. I always get the attention of kids. Grown-ups, by Malav Malka, to get them, sorry, let me rephrase it. To attract the crowd properly, that's hard. So Rabbi Shalom, please help me. Now I'm not going to say whether I finished that tefillah or not, or whether my tefillah is worthy to be answered. But I realized, wait a second. So for the first thing, you don't need the Rabbi Shalom, right? That you take for granted. When you don't need the Rabbi Shalom, you're kind of in trouble. You know, I used to give a shiur someplace, a chumash shiur, I don't want to say where, in a certain shul. And this man, an old man in the shul, a very fine gentleman, he used to call me to remind me of the shiurs on Thursday. He called me Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, several times. He reminded me, yes, he did come from Frankfurt, but he reminded me that the shiur starts at 9:30 and that by 9:28 I should be in the seat ready to go. By 9:28 I was sitting ready to start the shiur. He was always, if anyone dared to come over and talk to me, he would show them his watch, 9:28, he would push them away. And it never failed. This went on for years. Every time I started the shiur, within 5 seconds he was snoring away. Snoring so loud that I managed couldn't concentrate. You know the story that the rabbi once said to someone, he said, this guy's snoring, I can't concentrate. The man looks up, he says, Rabbi, you put him to sleep, you wake him up, okay? Leave me alone. Okay. So once when he woke up, he said to me, did I do that again? Was I snoring? I said, nah, just listen to the tape of the shiur, you'll hear it. He said to me, you know, you shouldn't feel like you're a meyuchas. He told me I used to do that libaba b'chaim b'chaim to Rav Schwab zechatz ali b'rocha. So don't think that you're special. I said, you did it to Rav Schwab, okay? He said, you know what Rav Schwab once told me when I went to apologize for my snoring in the middle of the shiur? He said, what did Rav Schwab tell me? He said, it is a great kavod for me when someone sleeps during my shiur. I said, the Rav is serious? He says, yes. He says, why is the Rav serious? He says, what happens when a person sleeps? His neshama goes up to Shemayim. So imagine, the Shemayim and neshama comes drifting in. Where are you from? Rav Schwab. 2 seconds later, another neshama drifts in. Where are you from? Schwab Shir. A couple of seconds later, another neshama drifts in. How many people have I this shiur already? So to attract people is not always easy. I actually had a friend who is a businessman. He said every day at 11 o'clock, he just felt so exhausted he had to put his head down. And he went for blood tests and a whole battery of tests. They didn't find anything wrong. And then they sent him to a psychiatrist. Finally, they sent him to a frum psychiatrist. And the man asked him, he said, by the way, he said, all the years in yeshiva, what time was shiur? He said 11 o'clock. Okay. You realize that your body already that's part of its time mode. That's here it is. So in life, we take things for granted. And we take things for granted, so we have a tendency to kind of fall asleep. The other thing that happens when you take things for granted is that you don't really enjoy life. Now, why do people laugh at a joke? They laugh because you say something which is not the norm. You say something and there's a certain element of surprise. And the human nature is we laugh. Why do people laugh when you see someone chasing his hat on the street? What's so funny about it? Because it's the ultimate stealer. The hat is supposed to crown the person. And here the person is chasing his hat. So when we see something which is out of the ordinary, our nature is we laugh. Which is why someone who says a joke in a proper way does it where the element of surprise comes to the end. Yes, you can kill a joke. I once had a friend of mine, God, this person is an attorney. But not a court attorney, just in contracts. A genius. He has a terrible fear of public speaking. And he told me his son's getting bar mitzvah, I can please write him out. Just the short, like to call up the bar mitzvah, and so on and so on. When is the bar mitzvah? In a year from now. He wanted to practice every single night. And I wrote it out for him. We changed it in practice, and he was so nervous. Then he calls me up one day. He said his wife said that the derech is, and where this minute comes from, you start out with something humorous. So could you give me a joke? Could you write it out? So you got to write out a joke. It doesn't work, And then, then it doesn't go. So I think you should skip the joke. He said, no, his wife said. So trying to think of a real simple joke, that he could say, not like Bachcha. So I told him, the one supposed to go mitzvah bacher. Actually, I wrote it out for him. Then he got a set of Mishabura, he got a set of Ber Maim Chaim, he got a set of, Ketzais, and the 2 volume set. And one person gave him an umbrella. So he asked, why are you giving me an umbrella? So he said to the little boy, I want to give you something I know you're going to open. Okay? Fine. So I told him this joke. So this is how he starts out. Okay? I thought I'm going to go through the floor. He goes, He says, I want to start with a joke. And that was the first mistake. You don't tell people you're starting with a joke. Because already the anticipation goes up. It's supposed to be like Aga. He goes, there once was a bar mitzvah boy, and someone gave him an umbrella to open. And he's staring at me. He goes, why is anyone laughing? It's because you killed the joke. What do you mean, why is anyone laughing? You gave away the joke before you started. There was no element of surprise. So when I say, when are we surprised? When are we happy? We're happy when we don't take things for granted. We assume it's not going to be that way. And surprise, surprise, I have it. So if a person doesn't take life for granted, and he wakes up in the morning and he's alive, so he's happy. I once went to visit a Yid in a nursing home, a true story, to the Yid in my shul. He always had a tremendous sense of humor. And I said to Rabbi Dalia, he went through a lot. Rabbi Dalia, how do you feel when you wake up in the morning? He says, surprised. He says. But the evidence is, that's why we're supposed to start the day with Maidani. Maidani is a way of saying, I don't take life for granted. I don't take it for granted. And if you don't take life for granted, then you assume nothing is coming your way. So you're basically happy with everything. Everything is a surprise. But if you take life for granted, and if you take your spouse for granted, and you take your children for granted, and you take your money for granted, so you're never happy, because you're only getting what you're supposed to get. You're only upset when things are not coming your way. So the less you expect in life, the happier you are. The more you expect, the less you are. And that's what it says that Paroi said to Moshe Rabbeinu, or Kadosh Baruch Hu told Moshe Rabbeinu, that when you perform the first miracle, that the stick swallowing the snake, it should be Tnu lechem moifes. What's tnu lechem moifes? It should be a surprise to you. You see, in the world of Kishuf, there are no surprises. Abracadabra, the rabbit jumps out of the hat. The crowd goes, wow. The magician doesn't go, wow. He knows whatever the trick is, whatever makes the rabbit come out. There's a famous story where there's a lawyer, he has a client, they accused him of murder. He's in big trouble, he can't get him off the hook. One of his big problems was he knows the client had committed the murder. So now it's finally the defense has to give his summation. He gets up and he says, my client has been accused falsely. And I will prove it to you. How are you going to prove it? He says, because the person is supposedly killed. Look, he's coming to the door right now. He turns around. And the judge says, you have an explanation for this? He goes, you realize that every single person turned to look through the door? Doesn't that mean you have reasonable doubt? Why did you turn to look to the door? It's a siman that this jury is not convinced. Wow, the legal journals start writing this up, this big chachma, and the jury deliberates and they come out with their sack, guilty as charged. So he goes, but what about my whole time? He says, we realize something. Every single person in the courtroom turned around to see the guy walk in, with the exception of one person. Who? Your client. He did not turn around. Tenu lechem moifes. If I don't expect anything in life, so you're surprised. Kishuf has no surprises. But if the miracle is the Dvar Hashem, you're surprised. So Pari said, I want to see if Moshe and Aaron indeed are going to be surprised. The matter, the stick, is the makar of simcha, says the Sefer Oyev Yisrael. Why? Because a stick means nothing is coming to me. I am a Shlomo also says this. I'm just a stick of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. The Rabbi Yain says that when a dog gets hit by a stick, he turns around, he's full of rage. He wants to destroy the stick. Doesn't understand. That's not the stick. If we view our lives as I am the stick of a Kadosh Baruch Hu, that's who I am. Whatever the Rabbi Hashem wants me to do, I am going to do. That is a sinner of bittul. In bittul, there is simcha. I don't expect anything. I'm happy. The opposite of the stick is the nachash. The nachash goes to Chava and says, God is taking advantage of you. You stick up for your rights. It's not fair. What's happening to you? That's the nachash. What happened over here was, as they walked in, Pari said, you're going to be in Mitzrayim? There's no such a thing as bittul here in Mitzrayim. And indeed, even Moshe Rabbeinu's stick, even Aaron's stick would turn into a snake. And Aaron said, there are times we slip into snake mode. We could slip right back into saying, hey, that story didn't go. I'm supposed to be the master of stories. How come not a single kid looked at me? They were throwing pizzas at each other. I must need the Rabbi Shalom. And the same is true for every breath of life. We make our mistakes. We have the ability to jump back. And the second we jump back, I'm trying to give myself therapy, you know, the second we jump back, our snakes turn into sticks. And that's why the snake turned into a stick and then swallowed him up. You know that, and ultimately, if a person feels that I am the stick of a Kadosh Baruch Hu, so Rabbi Hashem, tell me what you want me to do. Help me. Now tonight's the art side of the Rebbe Rav Zisha. Famous two brothers, Rav Melech and Rav Zisha. So they used to walk around to an inn, they would come into an inn, they would sit down, people would crowd around. And the Rebbe Rav Zisha would say to the Rebbe Rav Melech, hey Melech! I ate dry food, what's going to be? I ate the pastrami sandwich, I knew that. No, it's terrible, terrible. And somebody in the crowd is saying, how does he know that? Right? Somebody told me a story that at the turn of the century, he was a shtickle, he worked for a butcher. One of those butchers, the Bosser Kosher. Remember those signs? I still remember as a kid. The Schachter Rebbe was once walking in Bel Harbor, the neon signs, Bosser Kosher, the Kosher was blinking. So the Rebbe said, in this store, sometimes it is kosher, sometimes it's not kosher. So he says he came into the butcher one day, and the butcher is processing it. He ran out of meat, so he went, he picked up a piece of tray for meat, and he's cutting it up. He says, what are you doing? He says, Kain is etnit. No one sees. He says to him, what do you mean? He says, ich sei, du zest. He goes, du arbeit for me. You're working for me. You're not going to tell anybody. He says, Gott zet. So the guy thinks a minute, he goes, God is a good, God's good. He's not going to tell anybody. What's the problem? So this guy is standing over there, he's saying, how does the Rebbe Zisha know? Then the Rebbe Melech would go, oh no, you know what I did last night? I can't tell you. And in the meanwhile, the Melech and Zisha are crying. They're saying each other's averas. And people standing around and going, right? And slowly everyone's like dripping away. So I heard a beautiful word once from Tzvi Meir. The Baal Shem Tov says that what you see by somebody else, if you see an avera by someone else, you yourself have that begun. When something really irks you about someone else's personality, it's something that you yourself have a touch of that. If you did not have a touch of that, it wouldn't bother you so much when you saw it by someone else. All of the Nagayim that a person sees chutz by someone else, it usually comes from himself. Or the guy can say, I can't believe it, I saw this guy Miller dominating with his iPhone, I can't believe it, I got so angry, my laptop fell off my knees and crashed into the floor. You see somebody else's chait, we don't tend to see our own. But when something really irks you about someone else, that's a raya, says Baal Shem today. Look into your own heart. The Baal Shem once saw someone come into town after Shabbos, when it was Shabbos already. He fasted for 3 days. He said if there was no Chil Shabbos within me, I wouldn't have seen it by someone else. And at the end he said he wasn't moicha on the cover of the Talmud Chacham properly. The Talmud Chacham is Gebchina Shabbos. So the Rebbe of Melech and the Rebbe of Zisha looked around. This wasn't a charade. With the Ruach HaKodesh, they saw this guy had a trade for pastrami sandwich. And the Rebbe of Zisha said, my love, oy vay, musa bichi gassen. He understood that if I didn't have this pagam in myself, I would have not seen it by him. There are 2 ways to look at the world. We can look at the world as a stick. What is HaKadosh Baruch Hu showing me? Or we can look at the world as a nachash. Now, comes Mitzvah Shabbos, Adam Rishon was thrown out of Gan Eden. You blew it. You're out of here. And Adam Rishon, for the first time in his life, is experiencing darkness. He never experienced darkness before. He picks up 2 sticks and he rubs them together and he creates light, which is why we make the Bari Mari Eish. And Adam Rishon says, what was, life is going to go on. I made the mistake that the entire universe mankind is going to pay for it the rest of their lives. But guess what? Life is going to go on. And that is why Malav Malka, the Suda of Malav Malka is the greatest school for Parnasa, for Yeshua, for Refuah. Because when a Yid says, I blew it, Hashem, okay, just tell me what to do now. I'm your stick. Tell me what to do. The Rabbi says, Kim Hashem, come back here. I'm going to set life up for you. My father, Zuchain Baruch learned in the Vardik. So he told me this story. That in the Vardik once, the Altaf in the Vardik came in and he had a candle. And he put the candle up front and they put a sign underneath the candle. It was called Ner B'Tachim, the candle of B'Tachim. Because the Altaf in the Vardik used to do his this. He would go into the dark woods late at night and he walked into a shack. And in this dark shack he was planning on spending 2 weeks. And in the middle his candle was gone. Gone was his candle. He said, the Rosh knows I need a candle. And then an old lady came, knocked on the door, she gave him the candle, the whole story won't get into it now. So he said, you see, if you have the tachik to have a candle, you get a candle. Then there was a fire in the environment, a terrible fire, and everyone ran, and they managed to save everything in the Beis Medrash. The wind turned away, even the walls were saved, they brought all the svarim back in, but the candle had melted, was gone. So the Altaf in the Vardik said, there was a chesaron in the tachik. Because if you really have the tachik, you're not surprised by it. You're not surprised by it, so you don't put it up front. If I put it up front, they say, hey, look at this weird thing, look what happened. It's not supposed to be strange, it's supposed to be accepted. So they told the story to the Panovich Rav. And the Panovich Rav says, let me tell you my narrative. Okay? I was a young man, I just got married, I became Rav and Panovich not long afterwards. And I saw, we're losing our kids. I have to build a cheder, I have to build a girls' school. I didn't have a building. It was in someone's house, And finally the Galach of the town was offering to sell a certain amount of land where I could put up a cheder, and I met with the Galach privately. It was 100,000 ruble. No way I had 100,000 ruble. But he told me we can deal for 50,000 on the condition I bring in 25,000 ruble cash, and I have 3 weeks to come up with the other 25. So I ran home and I told, 3 weeks I can raise the other 25. I told my wife, but I got to bring in the 25,000 cash by tomorrow. She says, what are you going to do? He says, we'll take the whole money, if you don't mind, that your father gave me for a nabin to support me. We're going to quickly mortgage our house. So basically he put everything he had on the line and he brought it the next morning to the Galach. He said, go ahead, 3 weeks. So, in the next 3 weeks, I said she's going to raise the 25. Panovich Rav was an amazing fundraiser. Except he can't take anything for granted, and nothing was happening. He got a lot of advice, he got all my money's tied up, why did you do this? Wasn't happening. And the Schachter Rebbe once said he has 2 kinds of chassidim. He has those that ask for advice and give money, and those that ask for money and give advice. It usually goes hand in hand. I think we all have such chassidim, 2 kinds of chassidim. The 3 weeks are up, the Panovich Rav has not raised a cent. He does not have the other 25,000. Not only doesn't he get the property, he loses the deposit. He loses everything he has. And his shvedder, may they have a lechtig and come for Shabbos. And they hear what's going on. And they start the Shabbos by saying, how could you do this? How could you take all the money we put away and we gave it? And they didn't stop. They just kept hacking and hacking and hacking and hacking. And his mother-in-law was relentless. She did Chazar Sashir every 5 minutes. Know the story of this Maggid Shir. He took like the buffer that gave him the most trouble for his son-in-law. They said, why? Why are you doing that? He said, I want to get even with him. How are you getting even with him? He said, I want him to have my wife as a shregger. He said, okay. So now, She is killing it. She is mamish destroying it. Oh, Shabbos, how could you do this? You're immature, baby, and this and that. My Matzah Shabbos doesn't answer back. He wants to keep the peace on Shabbos. My Matzah Shabbos, he says he's had it. He runs out of there, and he's racing home. He races home. He doesn't have where to go. He goes into this medrash. He opens up a Gemara. He says, Rabbi Shalom, I guess I shouldn't have done it, okay? But I did it! And if I did it, it's all over. Gegangen weiter. And he started learning. I said, well, I'll lose everything. Fine, I lost everything. That's it. My life is going to go on the way it is, and I'll relight the candle. That's all. And he started learning. He put himself into a sugya, and he never was so close to the Torah in his whole life. He never felt so frustrated. By 3 o'clock in the morning, he said, okay, right now the Shver and Shviga probably peacefully asleep at home. And he returns home, and he sees 2 people standing in the door. He goes, here we go. But it wasn't. It was 2 gevirim in the town. They said, we're about to do a l'chaim, my son, his daughter. We negotiated 25,000 ruble dowry. We want the Rav to hold it for us. He says, listen, I'm not a safety deposit box. If you allow me to use the money, I'll hold it for you. Just give me 6 months notice. We'll get it back. They said, fine. He takes the money. You know, the Galif is smacking his lips. The sun is about to come up. He gets the 25,000. Boom, Panovich Rav comes, locks the door, probably comes into the window, and says, here's the 25,000. He comes home, the 2 gevirim are there. 2 gevirim are there. He said, well, we should have fell apart. We should have. We have the money back. He says, in 6 months, not now. And that is how he built his first muscle. He said, I had to get to that point where I said I was the greatest fundraiser in the world. For me to raise 25,000 in 3 weeks, it never happened that I failed. But I forgot one thing. I can't take it for granted. At the point I took out that Gemara and said, and I was willing to acknowledge that I am stuck, I need you. As soon as I reached that acknowledgement, the Kodesh Baruch Hu gave me his ner b'tach. And I want to conclude the story I heard from a friend of mine. And it's very dear to me, because this is a very first-hand friend. His wife was diagnosed earlier this year, Rahman al-Islam from Afra, and he was in the hospital with her many, many weeks. NYU was evacuated, and they were pushed off to some remote hospital in Manhattan, a small hospital. They had no choice. The doctor said he has to continue the protocol, and that's where he got a bed. There were no bigger clothes there. It wasn't set up. It wasn't in the best of neighborhoods. And one morning he said to his wife, he said, Sarah, do you mind, not using real names, do you mind if I go to Apple? She says, where's the shul around here? 30 blocks away. It's not the best of neighborhood, she says. I know, but I want to download the maybe shop this morning. If it bothers you, I won't. She says, when will you be back? He says, it's 8 o'clock. You have to walk down 8 flights. I hope to be back at I guess an hour to walk, an hour to come back, by 12 the latest. Just please don't be back late. You sure it's okay? Yeah. He runs down stairs 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Now he has a problem. In this hospital, the way it was set up, there was no access through the stairway to the main lobby. All the stairways led to a little door that went out to the street. The problem was when he came down, he saw there was an alarm. So if he was Shabbos morning. So he kept asking, is there any way to get to the main door? I said, only with the elevator. All the stairways go straight outside. So he tried all 4 stairways. Is there any other stairways? So someone tells him behind the financial offices, which is an annex of the building, there's some remote stairway. It could be that one. So he goes all the way behind the empty offices, and he runs down the stairway, and that too is alarmed. Okay? Turns around, runs back upstairs, but now the door locked behind him. So he's trapped in the stairway. He starts banging. He realizes it's an exercise in futility because there is no one here. It's financial offices the Shabbos morning. He runs downstairs, go bang in Manhattan, go bang from the inside. Who's going to stop him? So he felt very trapped. And he said, look, I'm here. It's between me and God. Let me at least use the moments. Took off his coat, threw a towel around him. And he said he began to daven like he never davened before in his life. And in the course of his davening, all of the pain came out. The pain, the fear, the tests, the diagnosis, the negative reports, the doctor's frowning face and his children and missing them on Shabbos and how the kids asking when is the family going to be together again. He said he poured his heart out to his Creator like he never did before. When he got to Nishmas, he said a Nishmas like he never did before. When he got to Etzeinu, V'nuchaseinu, he said, Boy, what am I asking you already? To be home with my family? You gave me a family. Why can't I be home for them for your Shabbos? And he finished davening. just Shabbos. His talus was drenched. He estimated it was about 11 o'clock. He tried knocking upstairs again. He said he knocked 72 times. That didn't work. He went upstairs, he knocked on the front door. Somebody passes by, he goes, "Hey, anyone stuck there?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, can't you open the door?" He says, "No, I can't open it." Didn't tell him why. He says, "Lord, you use your cell phone." He goes, "The battery's out." He says, "What do you want me to do?" He says, "Call the security guard. Tell him where I am. And by the way, yeah?" He says, "What time is it?" Because you got no cell phone, you got no watch. Just answer me, what time is it? He says, it's 1:45. Anyway, 15 minutes later, the guard comes by. What are you doing? He has to run up 8 flights of stairs. He gets up. By the time the guard found which stereo was on the other side, he ran up the 8 flights of stairs, and he washed his face up, came back into his wife. She's not crying. She said, "No, it's 2:30. He says, "What happened?" He says, "Don't answer. It's okay, I'm fine. Sorry." He made it to shul, and then they go to shul, but it's okay. He sits down next to her. And he says, "By the way," she says, I figured 12, maybe somebody called you for kiddush, maybe you lost your way. 1. At one point, I just started saying Tehillim. He said to her, "When did you start saying Tehillim?" She said, 1:45. Exactly when that person heard him back. And then he told me, he said, "I kid you not. Every report we got from the doctor after that story was looking up. The doctor came back and no more friends. Started saying, it's not as bad as we thought. Things are working much better than we thought. Remission is coming a lot quicker than we thought. It wasn't the original thing wasn't as bad as we thought. Everything wasn't as bad. Until that moment in the stairway, nothing was good. And afterwards, nothing is bad. There's a time in our life where we're forced to admit we are stuck. And the Hashem, we need you. Now we have a choice. We can wave the nachash and say, "How dare you do this to me?" Or we can wave the stick and say, "Kadosh Baruch Hu, please, tell me where you want me to go." If we have the seichel to pick up the stick, and it's amazing how quickly those sticks can swallow the nachash in life. Now the Rabbi calls us to a point where all the news afterwards is only good.